Number 10. White Dragon Blue Eyes. Getting a tattoo is one of the most common rites of passage, and Amber Luke from Australia felt that a tattoo would be the perfect gift for herself when she turned 16. But soon, that one tattoo turned into 3, and before she knew it, Luke had fallen in love with the ink. She is now known as the Blue-Eyed White Dragon on the internet. Any guesses why? The name was given to her by her friends, who felt that she looked like a dragon. Luke isn't only in love with getting inked. She has spent over $10,000 into transforming herself. She even got a tattoo on her eyeball that left her blinded for 2 weeks. With a slit tongue and blue eyeballs, this dragon has gone through a massive transformation. She is unrecognizable from her old pictures. She has multiple tattoos and piercings, not only all over her body, but on her face too. But were her modifications easy? Not at all. For the eyeball tattoo, she had to endure pain for 40 minutes while the ink was being injected. A mistake by the tattoo artist made her lose her eyesight for almost 2 weeks. The slit tongue was another ordeal. She couldn't eat or speak for a week after that. But despite the pain and difficulties, Luke often talks about how happy she is with her transformation on social media. Number 9. Vampire Woman. Popular young adult romances and horror flicks set a stage for vampire craze around the world. After all, who wouldn't want to be immortal? But this woman from Mexico had a different image in mind. The 45-year-old Maria Mendez is a lawyer, businesswoman, activist, and a tattoo artist, but she is more popularly known by the name of the Vampire Woman. Maria personally prefers Jaguar Woman more. With 96% of her body completely covered in tattoos, she's one of the most inked people in the world. With almost every inch of her body covered in art, it's hard to keep track of how many tattoos she has. Maria got her first tattoo when she was just 14, and it was a logo of the Swedish metal band Bathory. Since then, her modifications have only become more extreme, with eyebrows covered in piercings and subdermal implants on her arms and forehead. She's not your regular lawyer. Maria is a famous face, not just in her hometown, but also on TV. This popular body modifier has been touring the world and showing people her drastic transformation. Her tattoos and piercings have earned her a lot of praise, and she has been using the limelight for all the right reasons. After being in an abusive marriage for 10 years, Maria now helps the women in her community who are going through the same. Here comes the vampire to the rescue. Number 8. Alien SKYE PURDON. Body modifications aren't as common as tattoos, but they are trending more and more. It's not that surprising anymore to see someone with a face full of piercings. In fact, many body mods have found fans from all over the world through social media. For body modifiers, tattoos and piercings aren't a part of fashion. It's how they express their aesthetic. Most of us show our personal style through the clothes we wear and the colors we choose, but body mods like things with some extra oomph. 22-year-old SKYE PURDON proves that point beautifully. This young woman from the UK rose to fame with her wacky alien style. With multiple piercings on her forehead and around her mouth, she also sports a split tongue. PURDON often shares her tongue tricks on social media, and her followers love it, all 130,000 of them. Now that's some following she has. Number 7. Lizard Man. Like we just covered, body modifications are slowly becoming more popular, but 20 years ago, people with facial piercings and stretched lobes were called freaks. Despite all the weird looks that came his way, Eric Sprague chose to embrace his true self by transforming into something he really wanted to be. Sprague tattooed green scales on his whole body to become Lizard Man. His modifications took over 700 hours of work and a lot of pain. But does he regret any of it? Not at all. Green scales are not where the transformation ends. He has a split tongue and stretched earlobes. Sprague also sports fillers in his eyebrows. After all these modifications, he still felt the look was incomplete, so he filed his teeth into fangs. Lizard Man can't have human teeth after all. You can't really expect to land a conventional job with these modifications on your face and a mohawk. So Sprague built a career that was more fitting. Luckily, the 700 hours of tattoo work paid off, and his green scales turned him into a sensation. Sprague is now a freak show artist and spends his time touring around the country, suspending weights from his body piercings, sword swallowing, and pushing a giant corkscrew through his head in front of live audiences. Ouch. Number 6. Zombie Boy. Rick Genest was one of those few body modifiers who became a part of pop culture. Genest became famous after he was featured in one of Lady Gaga's music videos. The face tattoos that made him look like a skeleton became iconic. With over 90% of his body covered in tattoos, He began his transformation after a life-changing incident. At 15, Ganesh was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which made him realize how short life was. Fortunately, the surgery went without any hiccups, and he survived. But his dream of getting his entire body tattooed couldn't wait any longer. He got his first tattoo at 16, and since then, he has been hooked. Ganesh was obsessed with all things dark and macabre, and the tattoos signified just that. Ganesh's idea was to look like a rotting corpse or zombie with anatomically perfect ribs and exposed brain tattooed on him. He became famously known as the Zombie Boy. We can only imagine how painful the blackout tattoos around his eyes and nose must have been. Ganesh definitely took modifications to the extreme, but he also made it more acceptable. He modeled for many prominent brands, including Thierry Mugler and Diesel. Do you know of anyone with extreme body modifications? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Elfing. Have you ever liked a celebrity or a character so much that you tried to copy their style? We have all at some point of our lives. But Minneapolis Mara Kristen's situation is a little different from ours. Mara has always been obsessed with elves. She loved the mythical creatures so much that she wanted to look like them, with pointed ears. Mara tried out prosthetic earpieces for a long time to achieve the look, but it wasn't really enough. After searching the internet for answers on how to become an elf, she found out that there is a cosmetic procedure that can give her elfish ears. She spent $1,100 to get the procedure done. This isn't your usual plastic surgery done in clinics. Mara's ears were reshaped by modification artists. The tips of her ear were split open, and some skin and cartilage were cut away to give the ear the desired shape. After it was stitched together, the pain began, which felt like a migraine on the tip of her ear. That wasn't the end of her pain. Her right ear split open twice, and she had to get the procedure redone. Mara has 26 other piercings on her body and has spent over $1,700 on tattoos. Number 4. The Tiger Lady. Meet Katsin Hobbs. She is a stage performance artist, musician, and tattoo artist, known as the one and only Tiger Lady. Katsin has wanted to cover her body in tiger stripes ever since she was a kid, but she didn't know how, and her dreams had to wait until she turned 18. Her transformation to Tiger Lady was definitely not easy. The pain was so unbearable that she even fainted multiple times as 23 tattoo artists completed the inking process. A tiger is never complete without its whiskers, so how can Katsin's transformation be? She could have tattooed the whiskers on her face, but it wasn't feline enough for her, so for many years, she sported real tiger whiskers on her face that were sent from zoos around the world. However, the whiskers became a problem and were messing with her eyesight. Her solution? She got whiskers etched on her face permanently through scarification. Katsin was married to another body mod called the Enigma. Together, the couple ran a show called The Human Marvels. If you think this is extreme, then stay tuned for number 1. Number 3. The Enigma. We have already told you about many body mods who chose to change their appearance through tattoos, piercings, and implants. But Paul Lawrence knows how to take it to a whole new level. Popularly known as the Enigma, Lawrence has a full-body jigsaw tattoo. His ears have been reshaped, and he also sports multiple piercings on his face and body. His look has many things to focus on, but the showstopper has to be his horn implants. He got his first tattoo from the Tiger Lady, whom he later married. 200 different tattoo artists have worked on him over the years, and he has sometimes even had multiple artists tattooing him at once. His interesting appearance has landed him many gigs on television. The most prominent role he did was the Conundrum in Season 2 of X-Files. Lawrence is most famous for his extreme performances and has been at it for over 20 years. What are these extreme performances? The Enigma knows how to entertain his fans in a fun yet creepy way. At his shows, you can find him swallowing a sword or drilling his nose. He is also a musician. He sure is a man with many talents. Number 2. Iguana Mike. By now, you must have noticed that many body modifiers draw inspiration from animals and mythical creatures. They reshape their features, including tongue and teeth, to look as similar to the reference creature as possible. Many body mods tattoo their faces and go for piercings to achieve the look. But there are others who heed for fillers to get the job done. If you wanted to look like an iguana, what would you do first? We have already seen Lizardman's transformation and how he changed his skin to green scales, but Iguana Mike opted for a different path. His tattoo-free face is not something you'll usually see in body mods, but we get why he chose not to ink his face. To look like an iguana, Mike decided to get a prominent star-shaped implant on his forehead, with smaller implants on both sides. He also has spikes on his head to complete the look. And number 1. World's most pierced woman. Piercings are probably the most common form of body modification in the world. It has been a part of many tribal traditions for centuries. And body mods bring it to the modern world with a twist. Other than ear piercings, body mods go for lip, eye, and cheek piercings. Some even take it to extremes and go for multiple ones on their tongue and nipples too. But no matter how extreme they go, they'll never top this woman. Elaine Davidson from Brazil holds the record for being the most pierced woman in the world. When she entered the Guinness Book of World Records, she had 462 piercings on her body, of which 192 were on her face alone. A year later, her piercing count increased to 720. Elaine was just getting started. A decade later, she had almost 7,000 piercings on her body. We have already seen many instances of face-altering tattoos, but she achieved the same with piercings. With hundreds of charms on her jaw, nose, eyebrows, and forehead, she is unrecognizable. Davidson was a nurse before she became enamored with body modifications, and her before and after pictures are beyond unbelievable.
Number 8. The swollen head. Hair dyeing at the home or the salon is a fairly common practice, but things didn't really play out well for a 19-year-old French student who considered getting a routine hair makeover done. In 2018, things took a tragic turn when Estelle had what can only be described as an awful experience. Instead of leaving streaks of color onto her hair, the hair color product that she had picked from a local supermarket nearly killed her. She was fighting to breathe, not because of rashes or a runny nose, but a serious allergic reaction. Her head was swollen up to the size of a melon. After reading the directions, she did run a patch test, but she confessed to having it on for just 30 minutes rather than the standard 48 hours required. Estelle, after using her hair dye, sensed itching on her scalp right away, and almost immediately her head started to swell. She took antihistamines in an attempt to reduce the swelling, but her head was swollen to about 24.8 inches the following morning. Just to remind you, the average circumference of any person's head is approximately 22 inches. She reported being unable to breathe and that a swollen head felt like a light bulb. A chemical called paraphenylenediamine was found in the product, which is frequently used in hair colors, particularly deeper tints, henna tattoos, dark-colored cosmetics, black rubber, gasoline, and other products include PPD. While PPD is not generally hazardous, it might cause significant health problems if you are allergic to it, and sadly, Estelle was. According to New York dermatologist Deborah Jailman, the signs of an allergic response may vary from mild itching and rashes to life-threatening anaphylactic shock. She elaborated that swelling of the cheeks and tongue, breathlessness, and a dip in blood pressure are some of the more severe symptoms. When Estelle's tongue started to swell, she hurried to the emergency unit, where she received an adrenaline shot and was admitted to the hospital for the night. Fortunately, she recovered completely, but she used her experience to warn others about the dangers of PPD and DIY hair dyeing. If you are not allergic to PPD, it isn't harmful. But how do you know for sure? All you have to do is the patch test and do it right. Hair dyes have a very minimal amount of PPD in them, up to 2%, and the one Estelle used apparently contained only 1%. However, unless you want your face to swell up, or maybe something worse to happen, it's wise to be a little patient with the much-needed patch test, especially if you're uncertain about having an allergy. Number 7. Brain damage after eating pretzel. This year, a Las Vegas judge awarded $29.5 million to the family of a woman who suffered brain damage after consuming a peanut butter pretzel. Yes, you heard that right. Almost $30 million. In 2013, the jury further indicated that the healthcare agency that assisted Chantel Giacalone treated her carelessly. Giacalone, who suffered from a critical peanut allergy, was 27 at the time of the tragedy. Chantel was modeling at the Mandalay Bay South Convention Center when a friend brought her some yogurt with a peanut butter-infused pretzel on top. Upon taking a big mouthful, Giacalone went into an anaphylactic shock and suffered a cardiac arrest 2 times in a very short span. The Medic West ambulance services were called for soon after and administered first aid, but they made a grave mistake. They chose the wrong mode of administering the drug, which could have revived her. In the trial, Christian Morris, Giacalone's lawyer, stated that the woman lost all oxygen to her brain for a few minutes. As per Morris, no physician on board the Medic West ambulance had IV epinephrine and adrenaline therapy for severe allergic responses, which was needed by law, and Giacalone was instead administered intramuscular IM epinephrine. Here's a little medical explanation. When a patient develops anaphylaxis or an allergic shock, the IV or intravascular version of medicine is necessary for immediate action. It takes much longer for the drug to be absorbed via the muscles into the bloodstream, so it's always better to get it straight into the blood vessels. But the choice of using an IM shot jeopardized every minute of Chantel's existence. Morris, the lawyer, felt that her life was put at the mercy of a corporation that prioritized money over human care ever since she stepped into the ER. Giacalone ended up being a quadriplegic for life and resides in the dining room of her family. She can only interact with her eyes and can only be fed via a tube. Giacalone's experience is terrible and frightening, and it may leave people wondering how someone with a peanut allergy could suffer such extreme brain damage. Peanut reactions are most prevalent among children. Exposure to peanuts in such children may induce symptoms like vomiting, coughing, breathlessness, and rashes. Anaphylaxis, a serious and life-threatening allergic response, cannot be ruled out. While in most minor cases, an IM would have been sufficient, Giacalone required intravenous epinephrine ASAP. Improper medical treatment led to an outgoing and ambitious model, turning into a paralyzed and bedridden patient who requires constant care and attention. Number 6. Face cream allergy. After an unusual allergic reaction to a fancy lotion that left her whole face swollen and appearing like a beetroot, a lovely blonde's ideal vacation was, to say the least, wrecked. Katie Byrne claims her ideal vacation in 2015 was shattered when her face ballooned to almost twice its usual size, and out came popping large red blisters and dents within minutes of using the 30-pound face lotion. On her way to the vacation resort of Hard Rock Cancun, alongside her boyfriend Connor, the 26-year-old personal assistant from Dagenham, Essex, had bought herself the 30-pound Clarins Cosmetics cream on their flight from Heathrow. On the following day of their luxurious 2,000-pound vacation, she applied the Beauty Flash Balm and was terrified when the costly treatment left her face burning like it was put on fire. Katie had splurged out on the pricey Clarins moisturizer, set to appear her best after saving for a year on the trip of a lifetime. The compact travel package included a makeup cleanser, eye cream, and Beauty Flash cream to illuminate the skin. Katie had applied the Beauty Flash Balm before going out to dinner with Connor on the second day of the vacation. Connor was surprised to find Katie's face appearing bright red and swollen only a few moments into their nice sit-down supper. She removed the cold compress from her forehead, which she applied to reduce the ache, and discovered 2 large dents right where the cream had been smeared. Her room was visited by an emergency doctor, and she was provided an injection to deal with the allergic response. Katie was stuck with a vibrant red face for the rest of her trip, giving the appearance of a severe sunburn. She called Clarins after arriving back, and they agreed to examine her response. Katie received an apology from Clarins for the cream that left her appearing like a tomato. Number 5. Hospital food gave allergy. Kayla Bellotti was taken to Hunterdon Medical Center in New Jersey for the treatment of a severe allergic response to a dish, only to have a second bout of allergy caused by the hospital's supply of regular food for patients. The trouble began on Kayla's 15th birthday. On August 7, 2019, the teen started suffering a rapidly escalating anaphylactic response after a late meal at a neighborhood eatery. She was transported to Hunterdon's emergency department after receiving 2 epinephrine doses in a row. After the ER team stabilized her, it was decided that she would be kept overnight for observation. According to the complaint, Hunterdon's meal protocol calls for patients and family members to order meals from catalogs in the rooms. Kayla's mother took the initiative to order their next meal. Whenever Bellotti phoned the food service department, she explained her child's allergies, highlighted their seriousness, and was repeatedly given assurance that the food would be harmless. On August 8th, Kayla ate 1 spoonful of the veg chili sent with a message stating that it was dairy and egg-free. As per the lawsuit, she started to suffer signs of yet another anaphylactic response almost immediately. Her tongue ached and her throat swelled, making her feel more ill. It was strange and frightening. Kayla and her dad didn't think the hospital lunch was to blame at first. Instead, they assumed she had acquired sensitivity to another chili component. On the other hand, Kayla's doctor advised them to request and study the whole ingredient list for the chili. When they did, the parents found that a meal had been substituted without their knowledge. Why? Because the dairy and egg-free chili Bilotti had requested was unavailable. All the necessary triggers were present in the chili that was finally served. Furthermore, even though the hospital had a near-miss system in which incidents like this are intended to be registered to avoid such circumstances in the future, the family's attorneys discovered there was really no trace in this case. For Kayla today, remembering the hospital stay still leaves her reeling from anxiety after the dreaded turn of events. She hopes that the lawsuit will reform food safety standards in a hospital setup and prevent any further incidents like hers. Number 4. Vaccine allergy. Vaccines have been around for generations. The medical fraternity believes that the benefits of vaccination outweigh the risks, if any. Here is an incident where an uncommon adverse response to the coronavirus vaccine did not change a Victorian woman's faith in vaccinations. Annie Tall, 32, was diagnosed with allergies as a youngster and questioned her doctor and sister, a nurse practitioner, as to whether she could get the vaccine. In late May this year, Tall got her immunization done at Archie Browning Center. She waited the required 15 minutes after the treatment. That's when she started to feel somewhat scratchy in her mouth around the 8th minute. She had just been out of the facility for less than a minute when she began to feel ill. Tal went back to Archie Browning and was transferred to a private room where staff confirmed she was suffering from an allergic reaction. Tal was then directed to a Victoria immunologist to see if she could get a second vaccination dose. She was thereafter completely vaccinated using a procedure known as graded dose administration, wherein the total dosage is divided into smaller amounts and given over some time with strict supervision. She was also requested to participate in a research study with persons who had an adverse response to the coronavirus vaccination. Dr. Michael Benusik, an Island Health medical officer, affirms that only a tiny percentage of patients may have a reaction to the vaccination. Although being one of the few who suffered reactions, Tell said she is relieved to have had all of her shots done. So far, we've covered several instances of how allergies have gone horrifically wrong. Do you have any life-threatening allergies? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you give us a like and share, and subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like these in the future. Number 3. Bed bugs ruin family holiday. A mother alleges that a nasty, crawly infestation at the luxury resort stay left her family with bed bug sores and with her kid stung in the face. Sarah Finch, 33 years old at the time, planned a last-minute getaway in November 2021 for her husband and her girls at a 5-star resort in Mexico. However, she claimed she was isolated in her bedroom for a portion of the trip due to a serious allergic response to bed bug bites. The trip was ruined, she added, and the family had to spend more than £2,000 for alternative lodging to conclude their 10-night stay, according to reporters. TUI, the travel operator, stated that although an early inquiry showed no evidence of bugs, it was still looking into the family's concerns. Sarah was ill, and her spouse couldn't sleep because he was so afraid to bring the bugs back home. Their 1-year-old suffered the greatest discomfort, bitten all over her face and hands, which were the only areas exposed since she slept in baby clothes. To relieve the itching, she was prescribed medicine. Sarah needed an antihistamine injection since her bites were so painful. She was constantly dizzy and wheezy. Her 4-year-old was upset throughout the Christmas season due to scars on her arms and face. Sarah and a spouse traveled back to Swansea with their kids, Lily 4 and Charlotte 1, within a span of a few days. According to Sarah, the bed condition was beyond comprehension, with the whole bed supposedly crawling with bugs. She alleges she suggested the hotel to either find another room or fumigate the one they were in, but no plans were made. Until a replacement room could be obtained, the kids slept in the reception area. They met 12 other visitors who had the same issue, according to reports. They brought it up with the TUI representative the next day. Sarah needed to visit the hotel doctor since she couldn't even walk at one point, and got an antihistamine injection and was asked to stay in the room. She said that the family finally paid to relocate to Planet Hollywood, a $180 cab trip away. They had to package and separate all of their vacation clothing once they returned home, hot wash everything individually to eliminate any bugs which may have traveled home with them. It turned out to be a really horrendous holiday. Number 2. Snacks turn deadly. The family of an adolescent girl who died due to a severe allergic response hopes that her death would save other young people from dying prematurely of undiscovered allergies. Ellen Raphael from Blythe had consumed snacks knowing that she had been allergic to one of the components. The 16-year-old passed away in a hospital in October 2019 after suffering brain damage due to anaphylaxis. Her family had established a foundation in her honor, describing her as a kind and generous girl. Delight, Ellen's mother, hoped that her daughter's demise would lead to a nationwide program that allows allergy information to be coupled with asthma programs for children. Her mother said that her daughter's asthma was very well managed and that she had recently had a checkup sometime before the reaction. Ellen, who has a twin sister named Abby, fell unexpectedly ill on the 31st of October 2019 after eating chips from an Asian store. She spent 4 days at Newcastle's Royal Victoria Infirmary before passing away. Her organs were donated as per her parents' choice. Ellen's Gift of Hope, a charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged children in Northumberland, Newcastle, and North Tyneside, was founded in her honor. Her sister's middle name is Hope. The teen's ambition was to join NASA as a space scientist. Ellen had intended to attend the National Space Academy in Leicestershire to pursue space engineering. Her remains were shot into space to honor her love for astronomy. Number 1. Eyelash extensions. A lady from Ottawa, Canada, had a severe allergic response to eyelash extensions in 2018, and she went on to warn other ladies about the dangers of common cosmetic practice. Isabel Edith Kunn, a nursing student, claimed she had a fresh pair of eyelash extensions put on, and 2 days later, she discovered that her eyelids had swollen to the extent of almost shutting her eyes completely. Kunn asserted that she had never experienced an allergic response before in her life. She was also accustomed to having a beautician attach the lashes one by one with an adhesive for every few weeks since a year. She noticed her eyelids started to bulge after the procedure, so she questioned the beautician whether they were using the same type of adhesive, assuming that she was probably allergic to the gum being used. Within the next few hours, things got worse. She was admitted to the hospital and given an antihistamine and steroid intravenously to control the swelling. She was sent home with instructions to continue the antihistamine pills till her health improved. According to Kunn, a great majority of adverse responses to eyelash extensions are caused by the glue, as stated on the Beauty Bar's website. The bulk of eyelash adhesives are composed of cyanoacrylates, which function as immediate adhesives. Patients with moderate to severe allergic responses to cyanoacrylates have been described by many doctors. Sarah Dew, the founder of the Sarah Beauty Salon where Kunn stopped by, stated that, although she could not provide allergy testing to all the customers, she would do so if they requested it. She refused to comment on Kunn's or any of her other customers' experiences, but she did say that it's impossible to know what prompted such response to a basic and common cosmetic procedure.
Ten. The Hit and Run Doctor. On Highway 99 in Florida, near the Manning Avenue exit in Fresno County, Juliana Ramos was killed. It was February 10th, and somebody in a Hyundai Elantra had just smashed into a big rig. It was absolute pandemonium. Juliana just so happened to be a doctor who saw the whole thing go down. Being a good person and all, she stopped and pulled her car over on the median and got out to help. Both the driver of the Hyundai and the big rig suffered major injuries and were in need of medical assistance. This is where everything turned bad. According to the Highway Patrol, Juliana was then hit by a red SUV. As she was trying to provide medical assistance, the driver of the SUV ran her over and then kept going. They didn't stop to check. They didn't even slow down. They just sped off as if nothing had happened. The 26-year-old cardiologist was left dead in the road. Luckily, an anonymous tip led the police to James Comazi, a 68-year-old man and the one responsible for killing the helpful doctor. The police tracked him down to his home in Sonora, where they discovered the red SUV. He was arrested and booked on vehicular homicide, though he later posted a $15,000 bond and was released. He's scheduled to appear back in court this January, though it's unclear right now what kind of sentence he'll get for the murder. What kind of punishment do you think he should get? Let us know in the comments below. 9. Kidnapped in Brazil. In Brazil, a 19-year-old student was kidnapped and murdered by a convicted sex offender who posed as a Good Samaritan to trick her. The body of Mariana Braza was discovered dumped on a dirt track, a blindfold around her eyes, a gag in her mouth, and her hands tied behind her back. The university student vanished the morning before after leaving a gym 40 miles from where her body was discovered. Surveillance footage showed the murderer approaching her and asking if she needed help with a flat tire. But this was no normal flat tire. It had been slashed by Rodrigo Pereira Alves, the man who would kill her later that night. The last time she was seen alive was on the security footage, driving her vehicle into a yard on the other side of the street. This was presumably where the fake Good Samaritan was going to fix it. Shortly after, her car is seen driving away, but Mariana is no longer behind the wheel. This guy had absolutely no chance of getting away with the murder. Even as he was fixing her tire, she took a picture of him and sent it to her family. Mariana must have known in her gut that this guy was bad news. It's just too bad she didn't listen to that screaming intuition and run back into the gym to call the police while she still had the chance. 8. The worst Good Samaritans. Sometimes it's the Good Samaritans themselves that are actually out to get you. In Tennessee, police were recently searching for a couple of what you might call bad Samaritans, after a man and a woman helped change a guy's tire just to steal his car. According to the police report, the victim in this situation got a flat tire while driving down the interstate at about 4:30 in the morning. This is definitely the worst possible time to be stranded anywhere, especially by yourself. A man and a woman pulled over in a blue minivan to give him a hand. They helped change the tire, the driver agreed to buy the pair a meal as a thank you, and they followed him to the nearest gas station. But when the man went into the gas station, that was when the thieves jumped into action. He was in the process of literally buying them a meal for helping him when the woman jumped into his driver's seat and took off. The other thief drove the blue minivan after her, stranding the poor guy at the gas station with enough food for 3 people. We don't know exactly how this case ended. The Memphis Police Department did say that they found the stolen vehicle, but as for those responsible, these bad Samaritans are still loose and at large. 7. Breaking up the wrong fight. A Good Samaritan stepped in to break up a fight that was going on in downtown Calgary, Canada. It happened at James Short Park around 7 o'clock at night back in June when a woman and a man got into an altercation. The man began to beat the woman up in the middle of the park, and she was screaming for him to stop. The Good Samaritan, like any half-decent human being, stepped between them to help the woman out. It really seemed like something that anybody with a conscience would have done in a similar situation, but the aggressor wasn't particularly happy about it. He took out a knife and stabbed the guy to death. Well, first the Good Samaritan tried to make a run for it. He saw the blade and turned to run, but he tripped, hit the bumper of a car, and that was all it took for the killer to catch up. He grabbed the guy, plunged his knife into him, and then left him there bleeding in the park. He was transported to the hospital but died from his injuries. After a brief investigation, the police were able to identify the murderer as a 26-year-old male named Joel Gross Ventre Boy, but they weren't able to catch him right then. He's about 6'2". Police knew exactly what he looks like, and yet they couldn't track him down until September, a month after the stabbing. He's now been arrested and is awaiting trial. What do you think would be your response if you witnessed a man beating a woman up in the middle of a city park? And if you intervened and the man pulled a knife, what would your next move be? Let us know all about it in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Shot by the cops. Johnny Hurley saved many lives the day that he was shot down and killed by a cop. Probably the worst payment he could have possibly received for being a good Samaritan. It was just past 1 o'clock in the afternoon on June 21st in the city of Arvada, Colorado. Officer Gordon Beasley responded to a complaint about a suspicious person roaming around. The officer was en route to the area when he saw the suspect park his truck and start to run. According to the police, the suspect was Ronald Troike, and he was armed with a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. For absolutely no reason, Ronald ran up behind the officer and shot him twice, killing Gordon dead on the spot. Ronald then continued to fire off his weapon, shooting out the windows of cop cars and trying to kill anyone who got near him. He had snapped and was going crazy. Witnesses ran. People were ducking for cover. It was absolute craziness. It would be discovered later that Ronald had left behind a document saying that he was intending to go out by targeting police officers in the deadliest rampage possible. At some point during the shooting, Ronald went back to his truck and switched weapons. With his AR-15 locked and loaded, he was on his way to a busy commercial area when Johnny Hurley confronted him. Johnny, without hesitation, shot the man down with a handgun. His bravery by intervening probably meant that a lot of people survived what would have been an unimaginable killing spree. But when the police showed up, they saw Johnny with a gun in his hand and shot him dead. The hero was killed by the police before anyone even asked who he was. 5. Trying to save a cat. In New Hampshire, a Good Samaritan was killed while trying to save the life of a cat. I mean, really, what could be nobler than risking your own life to save that of a feline? Sadly, the identified person hadn't really thought things through. They were driving down on the street, on a rather busy road for that matter, when they saw the cat in distress. They stopped their car without thinking of the consequences, got out, and tried to grab the little ball of fuzz before it was run over by a vehicle. But they didn't act soon enough. A car smacked into the person, killing both them and the cat. Even though they were quickly transported to the hospital, there was nothing doctors could do. Stanford County Sheriff Mark Brave called what happened a freak accident. Nobody is going to be charged in the crash, seeing as the victim was dressed in dark clothing on a dark and busy road, and the driver of the car that hit them didn't even know it until it was too late. 4. Shooting the barber. A barber gave a guy a ride in South Jersey and wound up dead. The guy who killed him has been sentenced to 45 years in state prison. The victim was Miguel Lopez Jr., 53 years old. He was discovered on January 15th unresponsive in the front seat of a vehicle that had been involved in a crash. But Miguel wasn't dead from the crash. He was discovered with 4 bullet wounds. Police say he died on the scene as a result of massive blood loss from the gunshots. Somebody filled this guy full of lead and then fled the scene. That somebody has been identified as Hule Hana, already found guilty of murder in the first degree. From what the investigators were able to put together, Hule was at the site of the crash when Miguel saw him and stopped. Miguel thought he might need help and offered him a ride, but that offer would turn out to be fatal. They appeared to have gotten into some kind of argument when the car crashed, and Hule unloaded his gun on Miguel at close range, shooting him to death on the spot. 3. Picking up the tab. A Good Samaritan in Florida was shot to death at a Waffle House. There's nothing wrong with Waffle House, but it's probably not anyone's ideal choice for where they die. And what makes this case really bizarre is that the shooting stemmed from a fight that came because of one man's selfless generosity. It was 3 o'clock in the morning in Gainesville, arguably the best time to visit Waffle House. Craig Brewer, 41 years old, was feeling particularly generous that morning and offered to pay for the meals of people in the restaurant. He was basically handing out money, and that resulted in a verbal altercation with Ezekiel Hicks, 25 years old. Ezekiel Hicks was angry because Craig had yet to pay for his meal. He was paying other customers' tabs but hadn't picked up his. Just stop for a second and imagine getting angry enough to pull out a gun and shoot a man in the head because he didn't voluntarily pay for your meal at a restaurant. A man you'd never met in your life. Well, that's how mad Ezekiel was when he blew Craig's brains out the back of his head with a 9mm pistol. Ezekiel is now being held on charges of first-degree premeditated murder, a charge that will mean life in prison. 2. The Good Marine. Lance Corporal Alberto Lucio died on a California highway while helping victims of a car crash. The U.S. Marine, a kid of only 20 years old, stopped on the side of Interstate 5, just 55 miles from Mexico at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was trying to help a couple who stalled their SUV. They had been in an accident that left them with their lights disabled, and Alberto thought that he could give them some assistance. Sadly, an international box truck came out of nowhere and not only plowed through Alberto but crashed into the SUV. The driver of the vehicle came barreling down the road, not looking where he was going. The SUV wasn't even in the middle of the street. It was on the side of the road, and still the truck was able to crash into it and kill Alberto. The passenger in the truck was also injured, and the driver is now looking at a handful of felonies for what he's done. Colonel John Black, Alberto's commanding officer, said that he gave his life in the service of others and that his memory will be honored. Even at just 20 years old, Alberto had already earned the National Defense Service Medal and the Global War on Terrorism Medal. 1. Helpful construction workers. In North York, Toronto, a Good Samaritan was shot dead by the driver of a stolen vehicle. It happened on a Friday afternoon when a man stole a truck and began speeding eastbound in heavy traffic. The truck spun out of control. It crashed into a construction worker on the side of the road, hit the guardrail, and then plowed into a work truck. The people who witnessed the crash were construction workers. Doing the right thing, they ran to the pickup and tried to pull the driver from the vehicle. But this is where everything went terribly wrong. As the construction workers were trying to help, the man in the truck pulled out a gun and began firing at them. He fired 3 shots at the workers before they were able to overpower the man and take away his weapon. One of the Good Samaritans had to be rushed to the hospital with gunshot wounds, later pronounced dead. According to what the Toronto police said, the man had likely been trying to flee the scene and the Good Samaritans were getting in his way. He must have thought that firing his gun would make them back off, but it only made them angry. It's just a real shame that a man was left dead, all because a thief couldn't accept a bit of good-natured help. Thanks for watching. What's the worst thing you've ever seen happen to a Good Samaritan? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to hit subscribe for all the best videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye.